Okay. Article Roman numeral, no, we're going. Sorry, you missed the bus. Article Roman numeral 4.
Mr. Moderator, Paul Murphy, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, moves the town appropriate by transfer the sum of $23,412 from the unemployment insurance account to fund the first year, fiscal year 2017, cost items contained in the separate collective bargaining agreements between the town of Rockport and the following unions: Ask Me, Council 93, AFL-CIO Local 1679, Municipal Employees General Unit, and Ask Me, Council 93, AFL-CIO Local 1679, Supervisors and Foreman Unit, with each agreement covering the term of July 1, 2016 through June 30, 2019.
You've heard the motion. You should have a chicken underneath your chair, and so, oh, sorry. All those in favor are going to press 1. Oh, yes, and this is not a procedural question, a question on Roman numeral 4.
Charles Peterman, 22 Pleasant Street. Can we go back to the motion, please?
Sure.
So far, we've allocated $9,300 out of the unemployment insurance for motion number I, or motion number 2. Which was it, Selectman? Which we already took $9,000 out of the unemployment insurance? We're now taking an additional $23,000 out of the unemployment insurance to allocate to special costs. Right. Is the intention that this sum of approximately $32,500 will have to be restored to the budget in a later motion? Or is this coming out and only going out of the unemployment insurance?
Somebody from the Finance Committee, one of those...
Is this a reallocation, or do we have to refund this sum at a later point?
June.
In general, when we have an article for transferring money back and forth between parts of the operating budget, because all of the Roman numeral articles deal with the current year operating budget, we don't transfer money out of something with the idea we're going to run out. We do it because in this case we had extra money in the unemployment account that we have not used this year. We must have had a lot of people employed, yay. No, we do not feel we have to restore this. We also voted the $100,000 into the Finance Committee's reserve, which if there are emergencies, if suddenly we lay off half our people or something, that's why we put money, $100,000 into the reserve every year in April, so that if there anything happens in April, May, June, we have money to cover it, okay? But we do not anticipate running out of the unemployment money.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the clarification.
All right, you've heard the motion. Any more questions on it? All those in favor, in a moment, press 1. If you're opposed, press 2. We'll give you 10 seconds. Go. And again, you're getting, I think, extra time just to make sure that this works smoothly. And stop. 302 votes, and there were 281 in favor, and the rest opposed. Any questions there? Getting the hang of this? Hand vote, by the way. How many people use some sort of smartphone or other electronic device? Thank you. Okay. And how many do not? Okay. All right. Let's all get up and stretch for a minute, because now we're going into what used to be called the annual town meeting. Yes. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there may be people who. I'll do that. It's new, you know. Oh yeah. I was going to take it from the finance committee reserve. I know. I'm just trying to get, I just want to get this like going. Yeah. I mean, I understand. I still love you guys. I know. Yeah. Yeah. If you can find a different, if there's a better way, I'd love to have it. I know. Okay. Yeah. And you know, you don't know when people here, they may freaking hate it. I know.
At the bottom of the stack.
us. Oh,
Hey, John. By the end of this meeting, I want you on board. Anything you want.
I was talking about
Yeah.
come to meetings, get them now.
Just confirm it so I have backup in your packet. And you can say on it, I'm sorry I'll be in Timbuktu. But if the select want to speak to me afterwards, fine, whatever you want to say. Right. I'll tell them, but we're going to jump on it just with your request.
They go astray and then confirm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, this will go on until 4 or 5 with the petition articles.
Hey, Roger.
It might. And it could be an hour to those gadgets to start with.
You have a hell of a wife, Ray. How can you drink all this? Just have to find my town clerk. Has anyone seen my town clerk?
Any town clerk. Oh, of course not. He's not in favor of this, the articles, too. I think we should put them together. Are you going in?
Geez, if you had reminded me, I would have done it.
Very light, nothing else.
Right.
Cream makes it lighter.
Is there a price for it? Oh, that's right.
No, just coffee would be great.
Thanks, Beth. Oh, wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're about to begin.
Whoops.
Is Joanne Weil here? She gave me this clicker. I mean, this, whoops, this gavel. It's an early version of a clicker.
You want to call the next motion?
We're going to do Article 1. All right, the first 6 of these we're now doing in order. These are not Roman numerals anymore. We have graduated to, as they say, as Mr. Perry would say, these are integers or whole numbers. And so, the chair will entertain a motion under Article 1. And this one, we're both going to use our clicker and raise our hands, just to check it out. Go.
Okay, Mr. Moderator. Paul Murphy moves that the town designate the treasurer to be the agent for the various trust funds for the town.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, press 1. Opposed, 2. I'll give you 7 seconds. Yep. We're going to do the hand count also. I don't want to have them do 2 things at once. I've seen some of these people walk. Okay. Stop. Now all those in favor, please raise your hand. And opposed, the same sign. All right, the motion carries. Now I'm going to look mathematically. $270 people responded, 30 people were getting coffee, 6 people were getting water, 261 voted yes, and 9 voted no, and from where I was standing, that correlates. So we'll keep going. Article 2.
Mr. Moderator, June Michaels of the Finance Committee moves that the town appropriate by transfer the sums of money to be expended by various town departments to pay bills from previous fiscal years as set forth on page 40 of the April 1, 2017 Town Meeting Voters Booklet, with the exception of the amount of $630.23 to pay Comcast invoices, which should be $869.97 instead.
Moved and seconded. And this requires a 4/5 vote. Tough to do from up here, easy to do with these. You've heard the motion. Are there any questions, comments? Yes, a question, a comment. Wait for the microphone. Please stand. And we're going to get your microphone in just a second. Once Jim Ugoni moves out of the way.
It doesn't say how the town will raise the money. Just wondering.
Yeah, name and address, please.
Flavia Miaccio, 5A Oak Circle.
Okay. We're going to talk to one of the wicked smart people over here. June, please state your name.
June Michaels for the Finance Committee. You see, there are 3 columns. There's the amount, and then it says from group health insurance to moderator stipend. So the source of money is we're transferring money from one pocket in the operating budget into another pocket in the operating budget. And that is for the current year, again. I'm sorry, and that is to pay in this year a bill from prior years, okay?
All right, any other questions on that? There's a hand. Oh, yeah.
Greg O'Brien, South Street. I too am hoping that we end by 2 o'clock, and so I apologize for delaying here. This is my first town meeting, admittedly.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Tell your friends.
There are a number of similar motions that obviously are related to transferring money. What seems to be from something that accrues that we don't have to write a check for today, insurance and pension, funding liabilities like that for down the road, to Comcast, which we have to pay today. I think what some of the question may have been, which is certainly my question, is what is the Finance Committee's plan to bridge that gap? We're borrowing from a long-term liability to pay Comcast. I get you got to pay Comcast. If it's appropriate now, I'd love to hear the committee talk about strategy around that. Thank you.
Okay, that's an excellent question, because health insurance is certainly one of the major liabilities of the town. But what we're dealing with in these transfer articles is the operating budget. In our operating budget, think of it as a big pile of cash that we spend, and at the end of the year, whatever cash we have, we put back in our pocket. This group health insurance is not a long-term fund that exists, for 20 or 50 years. It is an operating budget line item that disappears on June 30th when the fiscal year ends. So later on in Article 5, we're going to be voting the operating budget for next year. And that money runs from July 1st this year to June 30th next year. And when the year ends, the operating budget goes away. And that, if there's any money left over, that is certified by the state. Hey, we did a great job, we had some money left over. And that is what we call free cash. And that is a funding source. That is a bunch of money that the state has certified that was left over from the operating budget. But to answer your question, this group health insurance is not a long-term fund for the future. We do have something called the OPEB Trust Fund. That stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. And that is a fund we're building up for this large liability we have to keep paying our retirees pensions and benefits. Okay?
And just as a reminder, some of these, it looks like the first one is to pay me for a couple of years. Back a few years ago, I must have forgotten to take my princely sum of $100 a year. So I did promise my wife I would take her to dinner, and so you should note that. Any other questions on that? This is actually very, very good and very helpful in terms of how budgets work. Yes, in the back. Wait for the microphone person right behind you.
David Gibbons, Marmion. Now that you brought up the OPEB reserves, I think your proposal was cut in half. You put a 17.5% increase into it, but it called for 35 by your reckoning, and that's probably the iceberg that's coming at us. So I think the question over there about how do we choose to take reserves and pay everything off, as you say, the current cash, the P&L, maybe ignoring the balance sheet, because these long-term liabilities are really, really going to be the issue that we have to deal with. So the 17.5% that you did fund was only half of what I think your committee asked for.
I'm not sure which line item you mean with the 17.5%. Can you tell me where that number came from, and then I'll answer your question?
I don't think it's really relevant to Article 2, but why don't you, I will give you a moment to go over there and talk to her and have a private conversation, because I think it's having to do with something different than the subject matter of this article. Is that right, June?
Yes.
It would seem that he's talking about the long-term liabilities
Yeah.
rather than the paying of prior year bills.
Yeah, these are...
But we'll be happy to explain it to you in more depth if you want.
I thought that was his question about how you're paying the current
Yeah, no, I
accounts
understand.
out of long-term things. So I was just really following up on his question.
Yeah.
So maybe next time that gentleman speaks, he and I
Yeah,
should
no,
talk
I understand.
privately.
I want you to get the complete picture, so I'm inviting you to talk to June, and then maybe she can explain your issue in a moment. That's all I'm doing. I think that's an important point. So if you come down, or June, if you want to go up, we'll be glad to have that discussion. I want everybody to get all the information that they want.
It's going to come up in Article 5.
Yeah, it will come up in Article 5, I've been told by the brain trust to my left here, so. Any other questions about this particular article? And we will, just to comply with our bylaw, we're going to use the clicker, then we will stand this time, unless, all right, so this is going to be a fun new thing. All those, and this requires 4/5, which I believe Mr. Perry told me is 80%. All those in favor, press 1. And I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Opposed, press 2. We've already started voting. Thank you. Hold on just a moment. You have a point of order as to the vote?
Yes.
Sure.
Which vote's going to matter, the standing or the clicker?
The standing vote, that's what the bylaw says. I'm going to use the clicker to get a sense of things, though. All right. Now, all those in favor, please stand. Looks like more than 80% to me. Please sit down. All those opposed, please stand. I know.
How many voted no?
It's unanimous. Oh, no.
3 people should have.
All those opposed, please stand. Oh, there's one there. 2. Okay.
But it says 3.
We're going to do the whole thing again, don't worry. All right, that had 97% in favor, which to me is more than 80. We'll do it again. All right, ready? Same one. We're going to do the clicker, and then we're going to stand. Ready, Sarah? All right. All those in favor, press 1. Opposed, press 2. We'll have 10 seconds. Okay. Thank you. Now, all those in favor, stand up. Thank you. All those opposed, stand up. Z, that gentleman, okay. There's a few others. Okay. So, I'm declaring it's more than 80%. Based on your standing vote as per the bylaw. And I'm going to take the percentage now based on, what was the percentage? 98%. Okay, we move on to Article 3. Is there a motion under Article 3?
No.
There is no motion. Anybody else want to make a motion? Motion? Okay. We move on to Article 4, and there are 2 motions.
Mr. Moderator, Sarah Wilkinson, Vice Chair of the Board of Selectmen, moves that the town amend compensation schedules A, B, D, and H for salaried employees as set forth in the proposals recommended by the Rockport Personnel Board and on file in the town clerk's office, which are incorporated herein by reference.
All right, you've heard the motion. Anyone want to discuss it? Sarah, you paying attention? Okay. Majority vote. Clickers only. And we'll give you 8 seconds. All those in favor, press 1. Opposed, press 2. Go. Okay. The motion carries 93% to 7. And there were 304 people voted, and 283 voted in favor. And just a little reminder, you can see in that little tiny square there, you can tell when you do a vote if it works or not. Is that correct, Greg? Yeah. Anyone have any questions about just that little tiny little square thing? Yeah, you have to look at it. Yep. It's a battery-saving feature, he says. Battery-saving feature. All right. Now we go on to the second motion.
Mr. Moderator, Sarah Wilkinson moves that the town amend compensation Schedule C for elected officials as set forth in the proposals recommended by the Rockport Personnel Board and on file in the town clerk's office, which are incorporated herein by reference.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion here? Yes. Page of the schedules. I don't know that they are. They're not
But
in the
I-
booklet.
I-
They're in the town clerk's office.
I can find one if,
Linda, do you have them? Linda has them.
Mr. Moderator, actually, I can help in that there are no increases anywhere in any of the compensation schedules. They're the same as last year, so.
Same as last year.
What?
Any further questions? All right. Take out your clicker. Make sure to look at that little square thing so you can, it's kind of a rectangle.
Thanks.
All those in favor are going to press 1, opposed will press 2. I'll give you 8 seconds. Go. Good. Thank you. $312 responses, and there were 94% in favor. Anybody getting a little chilly out there in the audience? Linda? Kind of a raw day. Should make you feel a little bit better for the moment. Hot cocoa. Just think about it.
Mr. Moderator? I just have a question. Chairman Bill Wagner has a hard printed copy of the compensation schedule in case someone wants to see it.
Autographed? All right. Okay. So the chair of the Finance Committee has those compensation schedules. If you want to take a look at that, they will be available, and after the meeting, available for purchase on eBay. All right, give me a moment because we're moving on to kind of an important, even more important than what we have done thus far. We're getting into the actual guts of our budget. And so if you will go to pages 43 to 48. Okay, take a look, and I have to go to that page. Take a look on page 43 of your booklet. You'll see that there are various sections which relate to the different departments in the town. 114 moderator, 122 selectmen, 124 selectmen committees, etc. In a few minutes, we're going to go through this table of estimates, calling off the sections in order. If you personally want to challenge or debate the Finance Committee's recommendation for the fiscal year 2018 budget, when I get to that section, you should call out hold, and the town clerk will note what is being held. If you don't intend personally to challenge those recommendations, remain silent. And what we'll do is we will go through the stuff that's not of controversy, and then the items where there is controversy, we will debate those and vote on those individually. Is there a question as to that procedure? Yes, wait for a microphone or come on up front. Yeah, a typo was pointed out. We'll fix that. No problem. Okay, now we will hear from Mr. Wagner, the chairman of the Finance Committee, to make the initial motion and some introductory remarks.
Well, Bob already introduced me, but my name's Bill Wagner. I live at 147 Granite Street. I'm chairman of the Finance Committee this year. It's not a permanent position. It rotates every couple of years. I wanted to say a few words about Article 5, or the budget in its total, before you deliberate on that. Each year, or for the last couple of years, the Finance Committee has worked with the town administrator and town administration and the Board of Selectmen to improve the budgeting process from what we had before. You may not see that, but there's been need for improvement over the last few years. This year, we began after town meeting in the summer of 2016 and did a 5-year forecast of revenues and expenses. Not a real exact one, but one that was intended to give us a guideline on what we saw coming forward this year and for the next several years. That forecast indicated that we would run a deficit in FY18 and deficits beyond that. So it told us that there was work to be done. This analysis was passed on to the Board of Selectmen, town administration, and it set the stage for the budgeting process that began in the fall. At this point, I'd say that the charter for Massachusetts says that the Finance Committee works for you, the voters, and it's our responsibility to present to you a balanced budget. There's a little bit of a confusion there because all you have to vote today is spending. So you can we can cap spending based on the articles here, but you can't vote on revenues. The revenues will be what they are, and I'm not sure that anybody would want to vote to cap revenues, and I don't think that we don't have the control to actually say what they will be. We can merely estimate what they will be. So our process begins with a careful estimation of those revenues, because we need to know revenues in order to know what we can spend. We work with the town finance board, the various people managers in the town government that are responsible for collecting revenues and for knowing what is going to come in. Things like state aid, real estate taxes, real estate assessments, which drive those taxes, many of the different fees that come into the town. The big item, as you've seen in our book, is real estate tax. So we need to know what we expect in real estate taxes. That's a process that's basically controlled by the 2.5% rule that was voted, some 30 years ago, and there are allowances to that. But so we know at the point in the fall when the real estate taxes are being set for the bills that go out November 1st or close to then, what our allowable taxes are probably going to be for the coming year. And so for FY18, as we come up. In our revenues, I'll point out that we did not consider grants. Particularly, we may consider them if they're an ongoing grant from year to year, but for the most part, grants are a one-year affair and for special items. So we won't consider those in our estimation of revenues. So we look at the expenses, and there are certain things in expenses that are relatively known. Our debt service, which pertains to paying off debts basically incurred in the prior year. So we know last fall what our debt service will likely be for FY18. Anything we do today is not going to change it in any substantial form. We have proposals to borrow, but those borrowings will not invoke anything other than nominal interest over FY18. Principal payments will occur in FY19. Pension and health insurance, we look to our advisors for health, and they tell us what we should expect. This year they told us we should expect 6.5% rate increases. So we incorporated that in our budget. Pension is controlled by the Essex Retirement Board, and they basically schedule out what the funding is going to be over the next 20 years as they work to catch up to a full funded basis. Our allocation is based upon our payroll relative to the other participants in the plan. So we don't know precisely, but we do know that their schedule is rising at 8 to 9% a year, which is what we used for our estimate. All other things are, we're not sure about, but we look to the current year, FY17, to determine FY18. And we did a new thing this year, which was we've had proposed increases, or we've looked at COLA increases for labor rates, and we apply that before this town meeting. This year we said we've got unions that weren't settled, and we don't know what we should do with regard to salaries for the coming year for COLAs. So we developed a fund that is anticipated to fund those increases, and in fact, when you get the chance to vote it, it will be limited to that. That fund incorporates the amounts that are expected for the union contract that you just ratified for FY17, what it will cost in FY18. There are still other unions that are not settled, and then there's all the other employees who would like to get their increases. But we've planned those increases, just like the elected officials, to be constant with this year. So in looking at the budget that you'll be voting on, the issues that we came across, which we identified in our letter, were pension and benefits. This is a big driver of expenses. So if our taxes are able to go up 2.5% to 3% a year, when we look at pension and benefit increases of 9%, because the 6.5% didn't hold, that creates an issue for the rest of the town in terms of what we can allow to have spent. As I mentioned, uncertainties still in the future. We've got a couple of contracts that are not yet finalized. We identified that there were issues in the public safety area grouping. The police department in particular has had many retirements, or several retirements, and turnover. So they've been faced with staffing problems, and there have been constraints in terms of available pool of people. So that has put pressure on this year's budget. We've provided for in the budget that you'll be voting on. So we think that we've dealt with it, but that's an ongoing staffing issue that they are working on themselves. We hope that we've taken care of it financially. There will be overtime and stuff that they'll incur this year. We've dealt with the challenges that we were faced and created a budget that is balanced. So what does that mean? That means that every dollar that we anticipate taking in is accounted for in going out. Any proposals from the floor that asks to increase that means that there needs to be a source that it comes from, because we need to keep the budget balanced. Looking forward, what does this budget mean and our process mean? Right now, we're running on the edge of what I would say is a structural deficit, and that means that the underlying cost pressures, pension and health being a big item, school budget increases, and those are the principal, debt service, are causing our expenses to grow at a rate that is possibly exceeding our revenue expectations. It's not a dire event. It's something that I think we can manage, but we're projecting deficits going forward. And we'll have to deal with those just as we did this year. As I said, benefits are one of the big issues. 9% this year in rates. Next year, we hope it would be less. If it comes in at another 9%, that's a couple $100,000 extra that we're going to have to find room for. Debt service has been a constraint. We've not had yet to pay for the Pigeon Cove seawall, and the borrowing on that is about 50% more than we expected several years ago. So we have to accommodate those things, and that's been driving the capital improvement planning process to say, limit our spending, limit our borrowing. June will speak to that more. On the capital side, for the next couple of years, we'll be looking to free cash, as we have in the past, to fund most of the capital, because we are looking to restrain ourselves in terms of taking on more debt, except as there's a couple of debt items here today, and there's a larger item that you will vote on in terms of a exempt debt, which means that the debt service for that debt will be added to your tax bills for the period of time that we have that debt in place. So for larger infrastructure items, we will need to go to that process to fund our needs. I should note that we don't have a debt problem in town. I mean, our debt is running about $12 million. It's well below what any advisor would be concerned about. What we have is a debt service problem. So our ability to pay for it and pay for everything else in the budget is somewhat limited. Our ability to pay for it as a town is not limited, but we'd have to give something up if we took on more debt. One of the other items that we have is school costs have been increasing probably more than the town can fund. I mean, their budget goes up, they anticipate somewhere in the 2.5% to 3% range. We have been funding increases at 2.3%, but with health costs going up this year to the extent that it did, we asked them to contribute the portion above 5% that they are responsible for, which is roughly half of the town's health costs. So that means that their reserves have been depleted, or will be depleted in FY18. As their reserves get depleted, they come closer to the point where an override may be necessary to continue funding the programs that they have. With that, I hopefully set the stage for what you're considering here today, and would be open to any questions, either aside or after the meeting or whatever, as we go forward. But I just wanted to leave you with those thoughts. Thank you.
And just so you know, the Finance Committee does an incredible amount of work, and they spend an enormous amount of time to go over all of these items and to present you with the picture that you're about to see. So I think that deserves another round of applause. Okay, we are going to go through the table of estimates on page 43.
Mr. Moderator, do you want a motion first?
What's that?
Do you want a motion for 5 before you do that?
I think, do we have the first motion?
We haven't done the motion yet.
All right, let's do it then. I thought we waited.
We didn't make the motion yet. Oh, you want to wait? Oh, okay.
Okay, so we're going to go through these. I'm going to state what they are, and you say if you want to hold a particular department. Is there a question before we begin? There is a question. Yes.
Mike Boucher, 120 Light Circle. I just had a question. I appreciate the Finance Committee explaining the budget and going over the different issues. But the couple big drivers you mentioned, the pension costs and the healthcare costs and the debt, you didn't really go into what is it either you're doing or the town as a whole is doing to try to control those costs. So if you could just comment on that, appreciate it. Thank you.
Take a moment to do that.
Okay, is this working? Is this working? Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay. A couple of comments. One is, with regard to debt service, I mentioned that we are looking to restrain ourselves and only do those projects that are absolutely necessary, and to the extent possible to use what June explained was free cash to fund those. Free cash can be used for one-time things. Capital is a perfect example of use of that, and increasing our reserves is another example. As far as health insurance, pension, the drivers there are employees. So one of the things that was put in place by town management was we're not going to add employees. There are no new employees in the budget for this year. So I think that's a good effort to control. I mean, aside from June's comment of, well, we could lay off half the people in town and our unemployment costs would go up. But I think the main thing is to look to not increase the employment and retain the services that are being provided. The health benefits, we looked at that a couple of years, or last year, and made some changes to the plan design that actually gave us some savings in FY17. And you may have noted that there's not a 9% change from year to year, because on the budget-to-budget basis, it was only, I think it's 3% or 5%. And the reason that that's that low is because we saved money versus what we had in the budget, and we used some of that for transfers this year. We can continue to look at that in the future, and of course, the important thing is we do want to provide health benefits for our employees. I think I addressed most of those concerns.
Any other preliminary questions? Greg?
To say we have a debt service problem and not a debt problem, they're obviously related. Can you maybe give the crowd a bit of a brief history lesson on where we ended up, how we ended up at $12 million in debt, and talk a bit about who holds that debt and the rates of the long-term, short-term debt? Brief, I promise, brief.
We'll get to the discussion of debt when we talk about Article 6 and the items, but the town meeting has no control over who holds the debt. Issuing bonds is what the town treasurer does in working with our professional bond counsel. The town meeting votes projects, and it votes whether it's going to borrow to fund projects, and it votes whether it's going to exclude the borrowing from the general tax rate. But it is entirely up to the treasurer on how the money is bonded how many years, and so forth. Okay?
Thank you. Anything else before we start to go through the table? Okay. 114, moderator. 122, selectmen. 124, selectmen committees. 131, finance committee. 135, town accountant. 141, assessors. 147, treasurer collector, or as they say in the Cove, treasurer collector. 151, legal. 152, personnel board. 151B, I'm bored. Oh. 153, human resources. 154, information systems and technology. 158, they're going to make into a movie, tax-possessed land. 161, town clerk. Hold. 164, elections. Hold. 171, conservation commission. 175, planning board. 176, zoning board. 177, ironing board. 181, community development. Maybe we aren't getting out at 2. 210, police department. 212, traffic and parking. 215, lifeguards. 220, fire department. 225, forest fire department. 231, ambulance. 241, inspection services. 249, animal inspector. 291, emergency management. 292, woof, dog control. 293, parking clerk. 295, harbor masters, shellfish. 297, harbor advisory committee. Is that a call-in vote? 400, Department of Public Works. Not hearing anybody from the cemetery. 500, health and welfare. 600, culture and recreation. 700, debt and interest. 900, other. Huh. Let's go back and discuss these now one at a time. And if there's a change in number, we'll vote that, and then the Finance Committee, with their high tech, will change figures as we go forward. 122, selectmen. Is there anybody that wants to talk about them behind their back? I mean, in front of their face. Toby.
Toby Arsenian, 95 Granite Street. I move to eliminate the line item 5 selectmen stipends at the cost of $7,195 and adjust the total accordingly. If the job is properly done, serving as a selectman is a great deal of work. And if the job is properly done, the stipends do not begin to be proper compensation for the amount of work involved. Serving as a selectman is not a job, it is not a profession, it is not a career. How could it be? You have to run for election every third year, and if the voters are sick of you, you're out on your ear, a selectman no longer. At least in theory, people choose to serve as selectmen out of purest altruism, out of love for the town, perhaps out of love for us, their fellow citizens. The stipends
Maybe a little bit less love now, but yeah.
They may not love me, but they love the town. The stipends only muddy the waters. The Board of Selectmen's service to the town is no longer the gift outright that it should be, nor are we paying them properly. It's wrong either way, it's wrong both ways. We've been paying the stipends for years. Why kick up this evil fuss over a paltry sum of money? There are two answers. The first is principle, the second is it is not a paltry sum of money. As Town Council explained in answer to a question here 2 years ago, if the Board of Selectmen receive the stipends, they are then legally entitled to the town's health insurance benefits. We're coming to that at 9:14, also held. The Board of Selectmen's health insurance benefits are not a paltry sum. That is $78,929, and if you add that to the stipends, you come to a grand total of $86,124. So if we first decide to be rid of the stipends, then when we get to 9:14, we can be rid of the health benefits as well. And incidentally, if you look under health benefits 9:14, you won't find any such figure, 78,929. It's buried in a much larger figure, and I had to hound the Finance Committee to get it. So now I hope we can vote to be rid of the stipends.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay, anybody else? Okay. All those in favor of reducing 122 selectmen by $7,195, being the 5 selectmen stipends, please. Yeah, just do a blank screen, and we'll do a yes and a no. Question over here. Yes, ma'am. Wait for the microphone. Please stand up, though, so that our microphone runners can see who you are.
Amy Seabrook, Broadway. I think that I just was given some information that makes me want to sit and cogitate a little bit.
You'll have 10 seconds to vote.
Thank you. Wow, look at that storm out there. Okay, so I want to sit and think about it, so I'm standing and thinking with everyone. The idea of the stipend seems so wonderful. It's little. But then the idea of the health insurance comes in. And I am under the impression that the people who are selectmen might have other means of attaining health insurance. And that is a big thing for us to think about. Thank you.
Over here. You want to go to the microphone that there's two of you?
Francis Fleming, 12 Pleasant Street. I have no problem with the stipend as it sits alone, but I do have a problem with selectmen getting health insurance. I am a former select person and I chose not to do that. And so if keeping the stipend makes the health insurance available, then I would be opposed to the stipend.
Eric Hutchins, 45 Pools Lane. Toby raises a good issue that's been raised a number of times in different ways over the years. And one of the conversations I've had with a lot of people over the years is the position, a stipend may be very appropriate. The one thing that may not be appropriate is the health care costs, the fact that they're not consistent. And what I mean by that is many people that may run for Board of Selectmen already have health care, so they actually take no financial gain out of it. Someone else may take the health care benefits. I would prefer in the future for the town to figure out what's an appropriate level of stipend to the Board of Selectmen, not against that, and they just all get it. If you run, whether you have great insurance or you have no insurance, you get the same stipend. Even playing field for anybody that wants to run.
I'm going to stop just for a moment so we can hear from town council and from town council. And then we'll go on and hear from other people.
Darren Klein, KP Loth, town council through the moderator. Just the system that you just suggested, town meeting does appropriate money for the stipend, but the decision on health insurance eligibility under Massachusetts law is strictly under the control of the Board of Selectmen. So you couldn't arrange a stipend in that manner because the health insurance decision is not town meetings but the Board of Selectmen's.
All right, lots of folks. We'll hear from this young lady here, then we'll go hear from Mr. Sepula, then person back there. We'll get you all.
I'm sure you don't mean me because I'm no young lady. Jamie Medea from Holbrook Court. I hadn't planned to speak, but this issue has come up at every town meeting. All I wish to say is whether I agree with each of their individual politics or not, that's not the point. The least we can do is provide health insurance for any select person who needs or wants it. When I see what they put up with online in personal attacks, when I see them standing at the supermarket just trying to buy something, and 10 people in one aisle come up to them with a personal goal. They can't even go to the beach without being looked at, talked to, and interfered with. I think it's the least we can do, is to provide health insurance. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Sepula next, and if you stand up, we'll get you a microphone. And I think we should give a round of applause to our microphone runners. They do a great job.
Yes, Z. Sepula. Well, I don't agree with Ms. Majeda's opinion, but that's irrelevant. I think that public officials have to expect criticism. They are representing many people with many different opinions, and as long as people have opinions, anybody that represents them is going to be subject to some criticism. But my real question, maybe you'll direct it to the town council, is regarding the matter of stipend. I'd like to know, for instance, if they got $1 a year as a stipend, would that then entitle them to health insurance? In the World War I and World War II, for example, we saw many industrialists that were presidents of companies went to work for the government for $1 a year. It subjected them to the regulations and rules of government, but it also made them government employees. So I really just want to talk about not the amount of the stipend, $71.95, just the existence.
That makes sense?
Darren Klein again through the moderator. As Toby previously said, and he was correct. To be eligible for health insurance, to be eligible in the pool that the selectmen then determine whether or not there's health insurance eligibility, you have to receive a stipend. It can be any amount. It could be $1, like you said. It could be the amount they currently get. But to be eligible for health insurance, Toby was correct. The board members need to receive a stipend.
And we'll hear from Ms. Wilkinson and then the very patient person way in the back. So Sarah?
Yeah, Sarah Wilkinson, Board of Selectmen. I also just want to clarify that to say that they're given health insurance, it means that it makes them eligible to participate in the town employee health insurance program. So that means that the selectmen who choose to take it pay their portion. I believe it's 75-25. I'm not sure what it is. But it makes them as if they're any town employee who participates in the health insurance.
And there was a question way in the back. So if you stand, we'll get you a microphone. Come on down.
Hello, Allison Penaloza, 46 Main Street. I've always thought about this situation, and I've always been in support of the selectmen receiving health benefits. There's not too many of us that will do anything without an incentive tied to it. Sometimes we do volunteer positions, but something like this really is timely. It takes up a lot of their personal time. I know for myself, I look at my paycheck and, $500-600 a month is taken out every month, which really isn't that bad compared to many others. But that would maybe persuade me to run for some kind of position, to know that I could save that kind of money every month. So I really think it is kind of a small thing that we're doing to guarantee that people are committed and wanting to continue to serve for our town.
Any further questions or comments on that? Or one more? Yes, Mr. Hand.
Ed Hand, 20 Landmark Lane. We've heard some numbers here, $78,500 from Toby for the total cost of the selectmen for health insurance, but we also heard $75,25, and I'd like to get some kind of correlation between those numbers. What are we really talking about?
I turn to the Finance Committee.
Yes. The figures that Toby cited were the town portion. So the 76,000 represents 75%. The selectmen pay the other 10,000, and you can see that that probably exceeds their stipends.
So the selectmen then are getting paying 25,000 if it were 100,000. Yeah, okay.
Anything further? Okay. So this is a motion under Section 122, Selectmen to decrease by $7,195 the 5 selectmen stipends, and then adjust the numbers thereby. Got it? So if you want to decrease it, you're going to press 1, and if you don't want to decrease it, you're going to press 2. Right? If we're going to make the change, that's the motion to make the change. All those in favor of making the change will press 1, and all those opposed will press 2. Yes? Well, you're eliminating it from 1 and decreasing it for the entire Section 122. I can't hear you, so I'm going to wait for the microphone.
Decreasing it means you're making it smaller or continuing to give it. As I understand it, we're eliminating it or not eliminating it.
You're eliminating or reducing the line item by $7,195, which my math says brings that to 0, and you're decreasing Section 122 by $7,195, and I'm not going to do that math because I don't have to. And you can't make me. As we used to say, what are you going to do, send me the C? All right. You've heard the motion. All those in favor of making those mathematical adjustments, press 1. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. And you can change your vote within that time. 9, 3, 2, 1. Time is up. So that motion failed, 61% to 39%. And there were 302. The numbers are 184 opposed, 118 in favor.